There are moments in your life when someone you love looks at you and makes you feel small, not with their hands, not with anything you can point to and say, "That right there, that was cruel," just with words that land so carefully, so precisely, that you feel them for years afterward. I was 20 years old when my mother told me I was making the biggest mistake of my life. And the worst part? She said it like she was trying to help me. We were sitting at her kitchen table, late afternoon, Virginia suburbs, the kind of house where everything matches and nothing is ever out of place. She had just refilled her coffee, and I had just told her I enlisted, that I would be leaving for basic training in 6 weeks. She didn't scream. She didn't throw anything. My mother has never been that kind of person. She set her cup down with the kind of care that told me she had been thinking about this moment, preparing for it, maybe even rehearsing what she would say. Her hands folded on the table, her face calm, almost kind. That made it worse somehow. "You're throwing your life away," she said. I remember the sound of the refrigerator humming, the smell of her lavender candle, the way the afternoon light came through the blinds in thin golden strips that made everything look softer than it actually felt. I remember the tightness in my chest, the heat rising in my face, and the way I kept my hands completely still in my lap, because I knew if I moved them, I might start shaking. "Your sister is in her 2nd year of medical school," she continued, her voice steady and reasonable, like she was explaining basic math to someone who kept getting the wrong answer. "She's building a real career, something that matters, respect, a future." She paused, and I knew what was coming before she said it. You're going to spend your 20s taking orders from people who couldn't do anything else with their lives." I wanted to tell her about the 2 years I had spent drifting after high school, community college classes that never felt like they meant anything, part-time jobs that paid the bills but left me hollow. I wanted to tell her about the moment the recruiter talked to me about service, about being part of something bigger, about purpose and discipline and commitment, and how for the first time in so long, something inside me had clicked into place. I wanted to tell her I finally knew where I was supposed to be, but I didn't. I just sat there, and I nodded once. Small, controlled. "I already signed the papers, Mom." She looked at me for a long time, and I watched something change in her eyes. Not anger, something colder than that. Resignation, maybe, or disappointment so deep it had turned into something else entirely. "Then I hope you know what you're doing," she said quietly, and the way she said it made it clear she thought I didn't. "Because no one is going to respect you for this. Not in the way that actually matters." She stood up, smoothed the front of her blouse, walked out of the kitchen without looking back, and I sat there alone with the sun still coming through the blinds and her words settling into my bones like stones I would carry for a very long time. I didn't cry. Not then. I just sat there and wondered if she was right. If I had just made a choice, I would spend the rest of my life regretting. If respect was something you could only earn in certain ways, from certain people, and I had just chosen the wrong path entirely. But I also thought about something else. I thought about how I had felt the moment I made the decision, the clarity, the rightness of it, the sense that I was finally moving towards something instead of away from everything, and I held on to that feeling even as her words tried to drown it out, because I had to believe that choosing yourself, even when the people you love don't understand it, even when they tell you you're wrong, even when they look at you like you've already failed before you've even started, I had to believe that still meant something. I had to believe it was enough. Basic training was exactly as brutal as everyone said it would be, and also nothing like I expected. The physical part I could handle, the 5 a.m. wake-ups, the runs that felt like they would never end, the obstacle courses that left my muscles screaming and my lungs burning. I learned quickly that pain was just information. It told you where your limits were so you could figure out how to push past them. What I wasn't prepared for was how much I would think about my mother. Her words followed me everywhere, through every drill, every inspection, every moment when my body wanted to quit, and I had to find something deeper to keep going. "No one is going to respect you for this." The words played on a loop in my head, and some days they felt like prophecy, and other days they felt like a challenge I was determined to prove wrong. She called twice in those first 3 months. Both times, the conversations lasted less than 5 minutes. Both times, she asked how I was doing in that particular tone of voice that suggested she already knew the answer and wasn't particularly interested in hearing me confirm it. "I'm fine, Mom. Yes, it's hard, but I'm managing. No, I haven't changed my mind." I kept my voice steady, polite, Surface level. I didn't tell her about the first time I qualified expert on the rifle range, or the way my hands shook afterward, because I was so proud of myself I didn't know what to do with the feeling. I didn't tell her about the drill sergeant who pulled me aside after a 20-mile ruck march and told me I had the kind of steady presence that made people want to follow. I didn't tell her that I was good at this, that I belonged here, that every day I felt more certain I had made the right choice, even if it was the wrong choice for her version of my life. I learned something important during those months. I learned that sometimes the strongest thing you can do is choose not to react, not because you don't have anything to say, not because you're afraid or weak, but because you understand that some people aren't ready to hear you yet. Maybe they never will be, and their readiness isn't something you can control. That realization changed something in me. It took the weight off, made the silence feel less like defeat and more like dignity. If this story is hitting home for you, I would really appreciate if you would subscribe to the channel and leave a like on this video. Let me know in the comments if you have ever had to prove someone wrong just by staying true to yourself. And if you think someone else needs to hear this story, please share it with them. I graduated basic training on a Thursday in November. Cold morning. Clear sky. That particular kind of brightness that makes everything feel significant. My father came. He had remarried 3 years earlier to a woman named Linda, and he brought her with him. They sat in the bleachers with all the other families, and when our formation marched past, I saw them both standing. Linda was crying. My father had his hand over his heart, and when our eyes met for just a second, I saw something in his face that I had been missing for a very long time. Pride. My mother didn't come. She didn't call either. Didn't text. Nothing. 2 weeks later, a card arrived. It said congratulations in neat cursive handwriting, and underneath, in smaller letters, I hope this brings you what you are looking for. I kept that card in my footlocker for a while. I would take it out sometimes and read it, and try to figure out what she actually meant. Was it genuine? Was it passive? Was it her way of saying I told you so without actually saying it? Eventually I threw it away, not because I was angry, not even because it hurt anymore, but because I realized I didn't need to carry it. I didn't need to keep trying to decode her feelings or win her approval, or make her see what I was building. I had marched across that field in my uniform with 60 other women who had survived the same crucible I had. I had earned something real, something that belonged to me, and whether or not she could see it didn't change the fact that it existed. That was enough. It had to be. It was Linda who called me that spring. I had been stationed at Fort Campbell for 4 months by then. I was settling into the rhythm of military life, the early formations, the training cycles, the strange mix of intense focus and routine boredom that defined garrison duty. I had made friends in my unit, earned my first promotion to private first class, started to feel like maybe I actually belonged in this world I had chosen. But there was still that hollow space inside me, that absence where my mother's voice should have been, not criticizing, just present, just proud. I was sitting on my bunk when Linda called. Late afternoon. The barracks were quiet. Most of my unit was at the gym or out in town. The sunlight was coming through the window at that angle that always made me think of home, back when home was still a simple concept, and not this complicated thing I was trying to redefine. "Hey, sweetheart," Linda said, and her voice was warm, a little tentative. "I know you're probably busy, but I wanted to check in, see how you're really doing." There was something in the way she said really that got me. "I'm okay," I said automatically, because that was the answer I gave everyone. There was a pause on the other end of the line. Then Linda said very gently, "You don't have to do that with me, you know. The I'm fine thing. I'm not your commander. I'm not judging your performance. I just want to know how you are." And something in my chest cracked open. I found myself telling her things I hadn't told anyone, about how hard it was being one of the only women in my platoon, and having to prove myself twice as much just to be taken half as seriously. About the sergeant who had taken me under her wing, and taught me that real leadership wasn't about being the loudest or the toughest, but about making the people around you better. About the moments late at night when doubt crept in, and I wondered if my mother had been right after all. If I had made a mistake, I would spend the rest of my life trying to justify. Linda didn't interrupt. She didn't offer solutions or try to fix anything. She just listened with the kind of attention that made you feel like what you were saying actually mattered, like you mattered. When I finally ran out of words, there was a long silence. Not uncomfortable, just full. "Can I tell you something?" Linda said finally. Your dad talks about you all the time. He shows people pictures of you in your uniform. He tells everyone who will listen about how proud he is. And I am too. You barely know me, I said, trying to keep my voice light, trying not to let her hear how much I needed to hear that. I know enough, she said, and there was something fierce in her voice now. I know you chose something difficult, because it meant something to you. I know you stuck with it even when people you loved told you not to. I know you show up every single day and do the work. That tells me everything I need to know about who you are. I didn't realize I was crying until I tasted salt on my lips. Your mother, Linda started, then paused. When she spoke again, her voice was careful, like she was choosing each word deliberately. Your mother has very specific ideas about what makes a life successful, about what deserves respect, but those are her ideas, her limitations, not universal truth. You don't have to live your life according to someone else's measuring stick. We talked for another hour after that, about her own life, about the choices she had made that other people didn't understand, about her first marriage that ended badly, and how long it took her to stop feeling like she had failed, about the people she had disappointed along the way, and how she learned that you can't build your life around avoiding other people's disappointment. The hardest part of becoming yourself, she said near the end of our conversation, is accepting that not everyone is going to understand the person you're becoming. Some people won't even try, and you have to be okay with that. You have to know that their inability to see you doesn't make you invisible. When we finally hung up, I sat there on my bunk for a long time. The light had changed. The barracks were starting to fill up with people coming back from dinner. Someone down the hall was playing music. Life continuing around me, but I felt different. Not fixed, not healed completely, but something had shifted. For the first time in a very long time, I felt seen by someone who mattered, and I realized that family wasn't just the people you were born to. Sometimes it was the people who chose to show up for you, who made space for you to be exactly who you were, without trying to reshape you into someone easier to understand. Linda had done that, without asking for anything in return, without needing me to be anyone other than who I already was. That night, I wrote her a letter. An actual letter, on paper, the way my grandmother used to write to me when I was little. I told her what her call had meant, how much it mattered to have someone believe in me without conditions, how she had given me something I didn't even know I was missing. I mailed it the next day, and when she called 2 weeks later to tell me she had received it and read it 3 times and cried every single time, I understood something important. The love and respect I had been searching for from my mother, the validation I had been waiting for, I had been earning it all along, just from different people, from people who actually knew me, who saw me clearly, and chose to stay. That was the kind of support that changed everything. That was the kind of family worth building. The next 2 years moved faster than I expected. I deployed overseas, 9 months in a place where the dust never fully settled, and the heat pressed down on you like a physical weight, and the sounds of the night kept you sharp even when your body begged for sleep. I came back different. Not harder, exactly, but steadier, more certain of myself in ways I couldn't fully put into words. I earned my sergeant stripes, started leading my own team, learned what it meant to be responsible not just for yourself, but for the people who looked to you when things got complicated, who needed you to have answers even when you didn't, who trusted you to bring them through whatever was coming next. That responsibility changed me more than anything else. There was a specialist in my team, 19 years old, first deployment, homesick in a way that went bone deep. I found her crying in the latrine one night, trying to muffle the sound so no one would hear. I sat with her, didn't tell her to toughen up or that it would get easier. Just sat there and let her cry and told her about my first months in the army, about how lost I had felt, about how sometimes the bravest thing you can do is admit you're struggling. She looked at me with red eyes and said, "But you're so strong, Sergeant." And I told her the truth. Strength isn't pretending it doesn't hurt. Strength is hurting and showing up anyway. She made it through. Thrived, actually. And 6 months later, when we were rotating home, she told me I had saved her life that night. I don't know if that's true, but I know I gave her what Linda had given me. Permission to be human. Proof that vulnerability and strength could exist in the same person. My mother and I maintained our careful distance during this time. Occasional text messages, brief phone calls on holidays where we covered safe territory, her garden, my sister's residency program, Dad's new job. We never talked about my deployments, never discussed what I actually did day to day. It was like that entire part of my life existed in a dimension she had chosen not to acknowledge. And I stopped waiting for her to acknowledge it. That was the real shift, I think. The one that mattered most. I stopped performing my life for an audience that wasn't watching. Stopped measuring my worth against a standard that had nothing to do with who I actually was or what I had actually accomplished. Stopped carrying the weight of her expectations like a stone in my chest. Linda and I grew closer. She came to my promotion ceremony when I made sergeant, took photos, cried again, sent care packages during my deployment that were full of things I actually needed. Good socks, protein bars that didn't taste like cardboard, a small photo album she had made of my dad's family through the years, with notes in the margins about who everyone was, and stories I had never heard before. She became family, not because she replaced anyone, but because she showed up, consistently, without conditions, without needing me to be anyone other than who I was. If you're still with me on this journey, I would love it if you would leave a comment sharing your own story, whether it's about finding unexpected support, or choosing your own path, or learning that your worth isn't determined by someone else's opinion. And don't forget to like and subscribe if you want more stories like this one. I had been in for 5 years when I got the news. I was being promoted to staff sergeant. Not just that, I had been selected to receive the Army Commendation Medal at the battalion's annual award ceremony. It was recognition for my leadership during a critical training exercise, for mentoring junior soldiers, for consistently demonstrating the kind of competence and character the Army valued. The ceremony would be formal, dress uniforms, families invited. A big deal. My platoon sergeant told me in his office on a Tuesday afternoon. He shook my hand and said, "You've earned this, Anderson. Every bit of it." I walked out of that office feeling something I hadn't felt in a long time. Not just pride, but certainty. The bone-deep knowledge that I had built something real, something that mattered, something that was mine. That night I called my dad first. He was ecstatic, already making plans to drive down with Linda, already talking about taking me to dinner afterward to celebrate properly. Then I sat on my bunk with my phone in my hand, staring at my mother's contact information. I typed out a message, deleted it, typed another one, deleted that too. What was I supposed to say? How do you invite someone who has spent 5 years making it clear they don't believe in what you're doing? How do you ask for their presence when their absence has become the background noise of your entire adult life? Finally, I wrote something simple, direct. I have an awards ceremony next month. It would mean a lot if you came. I stared at those words for a full minute before I hit send. 3 dots appeared almost immediately, then disappeared, then appeared again. I watched those dots for what felt like forever. Her response came 5 minutes later. "I'll check my schedule." Not yes, not no, just that careful middle ground she always occupied. Leaving the door open just enough that she could claim she had tried, but not committing to anything that might require her to actually see me clearly. I waited 3 days for a follow-up message, then a week, then 2 weeks. She never confirmed, never said she couldn't make it, just let the silence stretch out until it became its own answer. And 2 days before the ceremony, I stopped wondering, stopped hoping, stopped checking my phone every few hours for a message that wasn't coming. I just accepted that this was how it would be. My mother had made her choice 5 years ago when I told her I was enlisting, and every day since then, she had made it again. Small choices, quiet absences, the steady accumulation of moments where she could have shown up and chose not to. I couldn't change that, couldn't fix it, couldn't make her see what she was determined not to see, but I could show up for myself. I could stand on that stage and receive that recognition and know that I had earned it, that it meant something regardless of who was or wasn't in the audience. That had to be enough. And the strange thing was, it actually was. The award ceremony was held in the battalion headquarters auditorium on a Friday morning in October, cold and crisp outside, one of those perfect autumn days where the sky is so blue it almost hurts to look at. I arrived early. My dress uniform was pressed and perfect. My shoes shined to a mirror finish. Every detail exactly right, because that's what you do. You show up prepared. You represent not just yourself, but everyone who got you there. The auditorium was already filling up when I walked in. Soldiers in their dress uniforms, family members in their best clothes, officers moving through the crowd. There was that particular energy that comes with formal military events, a mix of pride and nervousness and the weight of tradition. I scanned the room once, looking for my father, for Linda. They were in the 3rd row, Linda waved when she saw me. My father gave me a subtle nod, but I could see everything he was feeling in his eyes, the emotion he was trying to keep contained, because that's what we both did. We kept it together until we didn't have to anymore. I scanned the rest of the room, briefly, just once. Then I made myself stop looking. She wasn't coming. I had known that for days, and it was okay. It had to be okay. I took my seat in the front row with the other award recipients. 6 of us, all different ranks, all different stories, but we were all here for the same reason. Someone had noticed. Someone had seen the work we did when no one was watching. Someone had decided it mattered. The ceremony began the way they always do. The national anthem. Everyone standing at attention. Opening remarks from the battalion commander. Several awards presented first. Good conduct medals. Achievement medals. Certificates of appreciation. Each person called forward. Each small moment of recognition. I tried to stay present, to focus on each person receiving their award instead of thinking about what was coming. But my heart was beating faster than it should have been, and my hands felt cold, and I kept having to remind myself to breathe normally. Then I heard my name. Staff Sergeant Anderson, front and center. I stood, walked to the stage. My movements were precise, controlled, automatic. I had done this before. Stood in formations. Received promotions. Represented my unit. But this felt different somehow. Bigger. Like everything I had built over the past 5 years was crystallizing into this single moment. The battalion commander was waiting. A colonel I had only interacted with a handful of times. He was tall, gray-haired, with the kind of presence that filled a room without effort. He shook my hand firmly. Then he began reading the citation aloud. His voice carried through the auditorium, clear and steady, detailing the specific actions and qualities that had earned this recognition: leadership under pressure, initiative and technical expertise, devotion to duty and the welfare of her soldiers, the confidence and trust she inspires in her subordinates. I stood at attention, eyes forward, trying to stay present in this moment, instead of letting my mind wander to the empty seat I had been trying not to think about all morning. The colonel pinned the medal to my uniform. The weight of it settled against my chest. He stepped back and saluted. I returned the salute crisply, and then he did something I wasn't expecting. He turned to face the audience. His expression was serious, but there was something warm in it too. Something genuine. "Ladies and gentlemen," he said, his voice carrying to every corner of the room. "Staff Sergeant Anderson represents the very best of what it means to serve. She has consistently demonstrated that leadership is not about rank or position. It is about character. It is about commitment. It is about the willingness to put others before yourself every single day." He paused, and in that pause the room was completely silent. "She has earned the respect of everyone in this battalion, from the newest private to the most senior officer, and it is my genuine privilege to recognize her today." Another pause. Then he said something that made my breath catch. "I would like to invite everyone here to join me in showing our appreciation for what this soldier represents." And he stood. Not just stood. He came to attention, a position of respect. The entire front row of officers stood with him. Within seconds, the rows behind them. Then the soldiers. Then the families. The movement rippled through the auditorium like a wave. Within 10 seconds, every single person in that room was on their feet. The applause started. Not the polite ceremonial clapping you hear at formal events. Real applause. The kind that builds and echoes and fills every space with sound. I felt my throat tighten. My eyes burned. I kept my military bearing, kept my posture perfect, kept my face composed. But inside, something was breaking open. Or maybe breaking free, because I realized in that moment that the respect I had been searching for, the validation I had been waiting for from one person, I had been earning it all along, from dozens of people, from hundreds maybe, from the ones who actually knew me, who had seen me at my worst and my best, who had stood beside me in the hard moments and celebrated the victories. The applause continued. 30 seconds that felt like forever. I saw soldiers I had served with, soldiers I had mentored, officers I had worked under, all standing, all acknowledging something that went beyond the medal, beyond the ceremony, beyond any single moment. They were acknowledging who I had become. And then, as the applause began to fade and people started to sit back down, I heard something, a voice, barely audible over the settling crowd. coming from somewhere near the back of the auditorium. "That's my daughter." My heart stopped. I turned slightly, breaking protocol, not caring. And there, standing in the doorway at the very back of the room, was my mother. She was wearing the navy dress she saved for important occasions. Her hair was perfect, her purse clutched in both hands. And her face looked different than I had ever seen it. There were tears on her cheeks. Her hand was pressed to her mouth. Her eyes were wide, almost shocked, like she was seeing something she hadn't expected and didn't know how to process. She must have arrived late. Must have slipped in after the ceremony started. Must have been standing there for who knows how long, watching the entire room stand for me. Our eyes met across the crowded auditorium. I didn't smile, didn't wave, didn't do anything except look at her. And in that look, I let her see everything, every doubt she had planted. Every moment I had wanted her approval and learned to live without it. Every time I had proven her wrong by simply continuing to show up and do the work. And also this, I had survived it. I had built something real, something that mattered, something that was mine. Whether or not she could see it had never changed the fact that it existed. She nodded. Once, a small, trembling movement that might have been acknowledgement or apology, or just the shock of understanding something for the first time. I nodded back. Then I turned back to the colonel, completed the ceremony properly, and walked back to my seat. My hands were shaking. I folded them carefully in my lap, and I felt something in my chest that I hadn't felt in 5 years. Not forgiveness. Not yet, but maybe the possibility of it. The beginning of something that might, eventually, look like peace. The reception after the ceremony was held in the conference room next door. Coffee and pastries arranged on tables. The casual mingling that follows formal military events. People congratulating each other. Small conversations happening in clusters throughout the room. I stood near the coffee station, still processing what had just happened. The standing ovation. The medal on my chest. My mother in the doorway with tears on her face. People kept approaching me, shaking my hand, telling me I had earned it. I accepted their words with gratitude, but part of my mind was somewhere else, scanning the room, waiting. I found her near the windows. She was standing alone, holding a paper cup with both hands like it was the only thing keeping her grounded. When she saw me walking toward her, something crossed her face. Fear, maybe, or shame. I stopped a few feet away, close enough to talk, far enough to breathe. For a long moment, neither of us said anything. Then my mother spoke, and her voice was so quiet I almost didn't hear it. I almost didn't come. I waited. I kept telling myself you didn't need me here, that you had made your choice and moved on, that showing up now would just be awkward for both of us. She looked down at her coffee cup. Her hands were trembling slightly, but Linda called me 3 days ago. She told me I was making a mistake, that I was letting my own fears and my own narrow ideas about success keep me from seeing who you actually are. She looked up then, and I saw my mother clearly for maybe the first time, not as this towering figure of judgment and disappointment, but as a person, flawed, limited by her own experience in ways she didn't even realize, scared maybe of things she couldn't control. She was right, my mother said, about all of it. The words hung in the air between us. I was wrong, she continued, and her voice cracked on the word wrong. You weren't throwing your life away. You were building something I didn't understand, and instead of trying to understand it, I just dismissed it. Dismissed you. I felt something shift in my chest. The anger I had carried for so long, it was still there, but it felt different now. Smaller, less important than the truth standing in front of me. I needed you to believe in me, I said quietly, not in what I was doing necessarily, but in me, in my ability to know what was right for my own life. I know. She was crying now, not trying to hide it. I know that now, and I am so sorry. The apology landed somewhere deep, not fixing everything, not erasing 5 years of absence and doubt, but creating a crack in the wall between us, a place where light could start to get through. When I walked in and saw that entire room standing for you, she said, her voice breaking. When I heard that colonel talk about your character and your leadership, when I saw the way people looked at you with genuine respect, I realized something. She paused, struggling to find the words. I realized I have been so focused on what I thought your life should look like that I completely missed what your life actually is, and what it is, what you have become. It's extraordinary, and I almost lost the chance to see it. We stood there in the awkward space between hurt and healing. It wasn't a movie moment. There was no dramatic music. No perfect reconciliation that tied everything up neatly. But it was real. I can't promise I will understand everything about this life you have chosen, my mother said carefully. But I want to try, if you will let me. I thought about that. About what forgiveness actually means. About whether healing requires the other person to fully comprehend everything they put you through. Or whether it is enough that they are willing to start walking in your direction. About whether love is something you earn once, or something you choose, over and over again, even when it is hard. Okay, I said finally. We can try. Her shoulders sagged with relief. She nodded, tears still streaming down her face, and for the first time in 5 years, I stepped forward and hugged her. It was brief, careful, but it was something, a beginning. That night, my father and Linda took me and my mother out to dinner, a small Italian restaurant off base with checkered tablecloths and candles and wine bottles. The kind of place where the food is good and the atmosphere is warm, and you can actually hear the person across from you talking. It was the first time we had all sat at a table together in years. The conversation was careful at first. Surface level. Safe. My father asked about my promotion timeline. Linda asked about my unit. My mother asked about the medal itself, the actual criteria for the award. But gradually, as the evening went on, and the wine was poured and the pasta was served, something shifted. My mother asked about my deployment. Really asked. With genuine interest instead of polite distance. I told her about the work I had done, the people I had led, the specialist who had been homesick, and how sitting with her that night had taught me more about leadership than any manual ever could. My mother's eyes got soft. You are good at this, she said, at taking care of people, at being someone they can trust. I can see that now. It wasn't everything, but it was something. Linda caught my eye across the table and smiled. A small, knowing smile that said, this is how it starts. One conversation at a time. One careful step forward. One choice to try instead of to turn away. My father reached over and squeezed my hand. He didn't say anything. He didn't need to. Later, after we had dropped my mother at her hotel and said awkward but genuine goodbyes, I stood outside the barracks. The night was clear, cold, perfect. Stars scattered across the sky like someone had spilled diamonds. I thought about that moment in the auditorium. The entire room rising. The colonel's words. The applause that echoed through the space. But more than that, I thought about the journey that had led me there. The early mornings when my body screamed for rest, and I got up anyway. The drill sergeant who taught me about discipline. The sergeant who taught me about leadership. The soldiers who trusted me when I was still learning to trust myself. Linda, who showed me what unconditional support looked like. My father, who never stopped believing even when his belief was quiet. And even my mother, who had finally, after 5 years, shown up. All of it mattered. All of it had shaped me. But the most important thing, the thing I had learned the hard way, was that my worth had never actually depended on whether she saw it or not. I had built my life on discipline and commitment and service. I had earned the respect of people I respected. I had become someone I was proud to be. And that was the validation that truly mattered. Not the applause, though it had been meaningful. Not my mother's tears, though they had represented a beginning. But the quiet knowledge, deep in my chest, that I had done the hard thing. I had stayed true to myself when it would have been easier to quit. I had chosen purpose over comfort, growth over resentment, dignity over bitterness. I had chosen myself. And in doing that, I had found exactly the kind of respect I had been searching for all along. The kind you don't have to ask for. The kind you earn simply by being who you are, fully and without apology. The kind that comes from within, that lives in the space between your ribs, that nobody can give you and nobody can take away. The kind that lasts. I looked up at the stars one more time, took a deep breath of cold night air, felt the weight of the metal still on my dress uniform, even though I knew I would take it off soon and put it away and go back to the regular work of being a soldier. But I would carry this moment with me, this certainty, this peace. I had spent 5 years trying to prove something to someone who wasn't watching. And in the process, I had proven something much more important to the only person who really needed to know, myself. I walked back into the barracks. Tomorrow there would be PT at dawn. Training. responsibilities, the regular rhythm of military life. But tonight, I let myself feel it, all of it. The pride, the gratitude, the hard-won understanding that respect is not something you chase or beg for or wait for someone else to grant you. It is something you build, one choice at a time, one moment of integrity at a time, one day of showing up at a time. And when you build it right, when you build it on a foundation of knowing who you are and refusing to apologize for it, it becomes unshakable. It becomes yours. And that is the kind of respect that changes everything.